What's up, guys? How's it going? So, one little tip for you. We got 10 tips. But the first tip, if you're starting out in this particular game we call Legend of Mushroom. Okay, first things first. You got a magic lamp. Magic lamp's going to determine what kind of gear you get. And this is kind of, a percentage-based system. And the higher level your lamp is, the higher quality of gear you have, and therefore the better stuff you have in the long term. So, one thing you might notice is this auto use feature. If you want to change the number of lamps you use, you actually acquire this as you upgrade your lamp level. And then if you're looking for specific stats, you can adjust by filter, and then if you want it to apply, just check it. If you don't, and you just want to look for a certain quality, then just go by quality. And then you can basically scan through your lamps and level your way up. Second tip is actually whenever you go about getting your relics upgraded, you should probably upgrade your relics all up to a certain level, as opposed to just upgrading like certain relics. And the reason why is because you're going to get a lot more overall base HP, attack, and defense doing it this way, as opposed to like upgrading one piece up to like 60, for example. I didn't realize this early on, and this was kind of a fail on my end. So looking back on it now, I'd recommend you do it this way, because by bringing up everything up to 40 and then working on the next set of pieces up to 40 and rinse repeat, your overall stat bonus is going to be huge. The third tip I have is actually going to be regarding enchantments. So you've got basically a couple of things to look for, but artifact enchantments are really straightforward, and that you basically want to pair relatively the same enchantments and the highest quality of enchantments as possible. So basically the red tier ones are really good, so you can get like Elemental Wrath, for example, and that'll increase your global skill damage by 5 or 10%. The main thing is knowing what your build is going to need. So like for, skill crit and stun being in the case of like a mage that's going like a holy guide path, you could just as easily make the argument that combo and counter can be handy for archers and crossbow builds. It can be, there's so many different angles that you can go about doing it. The main thing here is just knowing that these exist. So you've got crit resistance, global crit damage, skill damage. There's just so many variations on this. Like there's even basic attack with mana mastery. There's counter damage with a heart of resilience. Blazing Roar will give you crit damage. Crit resistance is Iron Wall. So, you kind of have an idea of like what to look for. You can also go by type if you want just a quick look at what's out there. Either another basic, so like I could probably swap this one out with Elemental Wrath, for example, because I think getting skill damage would be helpful, but hell, even Mastery is probably not such a bad idea. So like I could swap that out and then go over to this slot and really kind of enhance your artifacts and then kind of build off of that. Obviously, you have the individual pieces. Like right now, you can get Skyward Blade during the marriage event through Mass Ball. But, like last event, we had Tier Attack. So these are more your pay-to-win pieces, right? Okay, so going into my third tip, you want to save your gems for cross-server Showdown. And the reason for this is because this is where you're going to acquire the cross-server crystals, which you need in order to be able to get either Windborne Arrow, 100 Slashes, or Crimson Moonfall. Depending on the kind of build you're running, you might be running Crimson Moonfall if you're like wanting to stack damage and cast a lot of damage in general, right? But you can just as easily go like the 100 Slashes route and get those as well. You can just as easily go down the Windborne Arrow route. There's so many different options, but part of the reason why I stress this is because this is where you're only going to get those skills, and there are mortal skills and there are event skills. So that's part of the reason why you probably shouldn't dump all your gems into, say, gold. But when I was starting out, free to play anyway, that's what I was doing, is I was actually going over and I was dumping gems into gold. Now, that is not to say that, you could do it any other way. My fourth tip is, so within the actual arena, you want to be doing your cross-server ranked matches. The main thing that you can do to kind of get an idea of like what you're dealing with is whenever you do your matches and you match up with somebody, you can actually go back and look at the fights that you had as well as share them. So like, for example, I can go back and look at how well this fight had gone on, and you can just basically review what you've, who you've been up against. And then you can even go one step further than that and compare and actually look at what their stats are, what their additive bonuses were. This is really a great way to analyze the game. So if you aren't doing that, you really should. Of course, because this will tell you everything from their class to their partner and a lot of other wonderful things like what alliance they're in. And the other bit, and this is the 5th tip, is skill delay and also sets. So you should probably have a PvP and a PvE set. So for PvP, you want to have a set that's dedicated just for killing players. And again, you can look up different builds and such and find them on the internet. It's relatively easy, but like one example of where a PvP versus a PvP build will come in mind is like the Flame Book being used for attack bonuses in PvP, and maybe a more PvE centric book in that slot for the relics. And again, you can swap around and move around. You can also do the same thing as far as your everything regarding like not only your adventure sets, so you can have different gear sets even. But you can also have, like in the case of, different skills too. Like you can adjust and modify your battle plans as needed. Now, you might have remembered me saying that you should probably have a PvP and a PvE. Well, this is where you would set that preset. And then from here, you can actually adjust, what set you're having on, depending on what you're doing at the time. Of course, gear plan, this is where you can adjust like your gear and the set for those gear sets if you want to. Of course, you might be wondering then, how do I go about skill delay, right? Okay, so if you want to know more about skill delay, it's really only applicable to PvE. It's not used for PvP yet, but you can go up here and then tap on this and go to auto release delay settings. And then from here, you can actually control when your skills proc or when they fire off. And that way you can have, a little bit of strategy as far as your skills go. And the reason I say PvE is because it is strictly PvE. The last and final tip for the video, I believe, because we're on like, 5 tips already, is pretty much, of course, souls. You can level up your souls. I would say, you want to grab red souls, as many as you can. You can basically salvage them and then go into soul trial and just rinse repeat, getting rid of blue and green souls because you really don't need those. And even yellow souls, I'd argue, you really ought to scrap, but unless you can't get any other piece in that slot. So obviously, right now I've got yellow souls because those are the best in-tier slot that I have, but the moment I get reds, I'm going to swap them out with reds. And eventually then you can get pink souls this way by merging 2 reds together to make a pink soul and rinse repeat. And again, leveling these with essence is really recommended. And this goes into this kind of the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th tips here, is that you need to save literally everything. Alright, so pretty much you just need to follow along, and this is going to pretty much show you how to get that 5% discount on your purchases in Legend of Mushroom. So this is all you pretty much need to do is just basically install Legend of Mushroom. And you have to have Aptoid's version of this, and then of course you need to have the AppCoin wallet as well. Again, these are both in the description down below, so you're more than welcome to take a look at these, come and download them. And then once you've actually downloaded them and installed them, then all you got to do is basically open it up. And the AppCoin's wallet is basically a crypto app in a sense, but really all you're going to do is just go to the rewards tab, go to the promo codes tab, put in the promo code that I've got down in the description, which is Dakanoth LM, and then you'll be able to get your 5% extra bonus on the game, so you can save money playing the game.